Hey everybody, John here from the esports department, and this is going to be a real fun slate breakdown. This is one of my favorite slates that we've had in a while, and I've got a lot of kind of interesting information here, I think. I went ahead and expanded the stats that I'm using today so that we can get a little bit of extra context around some of these matchups, because I think we've got some really fun ones here in general, and this could be a really good slate for trying to make some money. So, let's start out with the first game. We got JDG, they're minus 210. 6-2 on the season, playing against LGD, who is plus 155, 4-2 on the season. As far as just like eye test, both of these teams have seemed pretty similar to me. They both had games where they looked like they could be a real contender to win the LPL this season. They've both had some games where they looked real stupid. JDG in their last series, game 1 I think it was, just looked awful, and then just came back and looked great in game 2 and 3. That's kind of been the staple for both of these teams. Let's take a look at some of the extra stats I added for some of the matchups this week. Opponent record. We were doing this at the beginning of the season. I stopped doing it as often because as the season goes on, especially in the LCK, where all the teams play each other twice, everybody starts to get looking pretty similar. But for today, I wanted to use it as kind of a way to maybe put some extra context on some of these matchups. So JDG's opponent record is 33-34, so they've played overall teams that are slightly losing when combined together. Versus winning teams, they're 3-2. It is worth noting that that is 5 out of their 8 matchups, so the majority of JDG's games have been against teams with winning records thus far. LGD is plus 155. Their opponent record is 29-23, so they have played a more teams that have won more than they've lost overall, and their record versus winning teams is 2-2, so very similar to the 3-2. Also worth noting, LGD as well has played 4 out of their 6 matches against teams that ended up being winning teams. So in theory, actually, I think both of these teams have actually played tougher than average schedules, and they're both looking pretty good at 4-2 and 6-2. So I think that kind of meets the eye test in both of these teams possibly being like contenders at least to win the LPL this season. Looking at the gold per minute, 1864 to 1768. That's enough of a gap to care about. JDG with almost 100 points of gold per minute extra. Gold differential per minute, 148 to 33. A reasonably sized gap there. We've continued to have this problem with JDG, which is that their first blood and first turret is very bad, which is kind of unfortunate given that I think that's kind of important for winning games this season. 66 and 53 for LGD, so a little bit better there. Dragon percentage, 55 to 52, so very similar there. Gold differential at 15. JDG plus 141 to plus 607. So let's put these stats together in an interesting way, because I think this is important to note. If LGD's gold differential per minute is lower than JDG's, but they are further ahead at 15 minutes, that's telling you that JDG is winning the mid to late game, or that LGD is losing the mid to late game. They're getting further ahead, but they're not ending up with bigger gold leads, even though they're ahead by more at the 15-minute mark. And same thing with JDG, or the opposite with JDG. So they're not that far ahead at 15 minutes, but in the end, they're ending up with large gold differential per minute. So they're gaining a lot of gold in the mid to late game. LGD is getting it mostly in the laning phase. Why I think that's relevant? When you have two really good teams like this, a lot of it I think is going to come down to who's winning team fights. And when we see those kinds of statistics, it makes me think that JDG is picking more like team fight focus or playing team fights better than LGD is if they're gaining such a significant amount of gold in the 15 minutes till the end of the game portion. And it makes me think that this matchup definitely leans towards JDG. I do think that's probably pretty accurate. LGD is a very live underdog. We've seen JDG make some awful drafting mistakes this season, and you can just give a game away in the draft phase right now, no doubt about it. You can just straight up give one away, and I think LGD is a team that's going to take one if you give it away. LGD seems very playable as far as underdogs on this slate go, but the statistics for me are pointing for JDG, and I'm expecting to be heavier on JDG than LGD. It is worth noting in the prices that JDG is pretty darn cheap. Zoom at 6,200. Kanavi's a little more expensive at 7,000. Yagao's only 7,200. Loken 76. So they're on the cheaper side for a lot of their positions. Lumao at 5,200, who's a fantastic scoring support for the most part, which is going to make them very popular because they're going to fit well with these other favorites that people are going to want to play. So JDG probably pretty on the chalk side for this slate, I would think, but it's a great matchup, and I think getting either side of this matchup is valuable. When you look at JDG's kill per win, 20.1 with a 17.3 death per loss, so they are one of the bloodier teams in the entire LPL. 15.2 and 16.1, a little bit more conservative for LGD. What I'll say about matchups of two really good teams like this, they tend in the LPL especially to be bloodier than your average matchup. At the same time, there's a common thing that happens where like JDG wins game 1 17-4, and LGD wins game 2 17-4, and then suddenly it doesn't actually score that well, even though it's pretty bloody. Not necessarily 17-4, but I think this matchup has super high potential to be in the winning lineup. One of these two teams, I think, a vast majority of the time for me, one of these two teams is going to be in the winning lineup as a stack. I would be hard-pressed not to be including one of these two teams in almost any lineup, especially if it's not super large field. In super large field, maybe you fade it and hope to get better ownership leverage, but I would be hard-pressed to think that one of these two teams is not ending up in the winning lineup tonight. Matchup number 2, FPX minus 315, 5-2 on the season. Vici Gaming is plus 220, 4-3 on the season. So, looking at their records, FPX's opponent's record is 29-31, so their opponents are slightly negative. Their record versus winning teams is 3-1. This is pretty relevant. There's not that many winning teams in the LPL. The ones that are winning are pretty good for the most part. So being 3-1 and having over 50% of your opponents be winning teams is a valid stat, especially when we look at this. Vici's opponent's record, 23-36, so massively losing. They are 0-3 against winning teams, so they've only beaten underdogs so far, or only beaten teams that are negative record. And less than half of their matches have been played against winning teams. So differentiating the fact that, yeah, like these are their stats. Like you can see a 1795 gold per minute and a 1758. That's pretty close, except FPX did this against mostly teams that are winning, and they beat most of those teams. And Vici did this against mostly teams that are losing, and they lost against every good team they played against. That's super relevant. I know with Vici having Zika and they're playing Leon this match, which I think is a negative thing. I think most people will recognize that Leon has been worse this season than Aches. But I know their newer roster has performed better since they brought Zika in instead of Forge. That's relevant. But for me, the stats are pretty lopsided on the FPX side. And I also think that Vici is going to be a popular underdog for this slate. So I think I'm leaning significantly more towards FPX in this matchup for sure. I don't think that Vici is going to be like a hugely owned underdog, but I think they will be a team that people go to. They've had some wins recently. FPX has looked shaky a few times recently. I definitely think some people will go towards Vici, and I like FPX quite a bit in this matchup. Looking at the other stats, goal differential per minute, 65 for FPX, 28 for Vici. First blood, first turret, 68-47 to 47-53, so pretty close other than a first blood edge to FPX. Dragon control, 55 to 53. Goal differential at 15, minus 252 to plus 653. So this is the same thing I was talking about in the other matchup. If you are a better goal differential per minute team, but you're worse at 15 minutes, that tells me your mid-game team fighting, skirmishing, all that kind of stuff has gone significantly better for you, which also leans probably towards you guys drafting the kinds of compositions that do that well. That definitely makes me favor more towards FPX as well. I kind of like teams that aren't that great at 15 minutes but are fantastic. Sorry, slight dog issues. Was just going to say, if you can ever catch a team that's like pretty negative at 15 minutes, not super negative, but just has like a little negative like this, but then has really great goal per minute or goal differential per minute, it's really rare. But usually that will tell you that they just like do not lose fights in the mid game. But it also lets you know that when they're behind, they can still win games. But if they get ahead, they're probably almost never losing if they're ahead at 15 minutes, given that they're averagely behind and still doing well overall in the season. So I lean really heavily towards FPX in this matchup. Kill per win, death per loss, 16.2 kill per win for FPX with an almost 19 per loss for Vici. So pretty high scoring there. Vici's kill per win, 15.5 to almost 21 death per loss for FPX. So if Vici does win this matchup, you can expect them to be in the takedown lineup basically for sure. Probably for Vici, I think, if they win this matchup. But I do lean pretty heavily towards FPX. Vici makes more of a larger field GPP play to me. They're not like a team that I would play in like a 100-something person field. I don't think they win often enough that you need that kind of leverage. I'd rather play LGD if you were going to play in that spot. Going down to the LCK, Damwon Gaming at minus 375, 5-1 on the season, against Afrika Freaks, who are plus 250, 4-2 on the season. Damwon's opponents are 14-25, so Damwon has played the pits of the LCK basically, and they're 1-1 against winning teams. So even though they have 6 games overall, only 33% of them were against winning teams, and they only won half of those. Afrika their opponents are 18-22, so a much more balanced schedule. Their record against winning teams, 1-2, so they are 3-0 against losing teams and 1-2 against the positive teams that they've played. I will note for both leagues, I did count teams that were even as winning teams. So notably in the LPL it was RNG, and in the LCK it was Dynamics. I counted those as winning teams, and I actually do think that Dynamics was part of the record for maybe both of these teams, and I know RNG was part of the record for a number of teams in the LPL. Let's look at the stats. Gold per minute, 1948 to 1753, so huge edge for Damwon. Gold differential per minute, 320 to 41. First blood, first turret, 38.92 to 57.43, so a pretty balanced 57.43 for Afrika. Not a lot of first blood, but a ton of first turret for Damwon. So they're playing the macro game in the early game significantly better, but usually probably leaving someone out to get dived is why their first blood would be so low. Dragon percentage, 54 to straight 54. Very nice. Interesting. Gold differential at 15, plus 2578 to minus 606. So I don't think plus 2578 is realistic at all, and we've talked about that before. I think that number was in the 3000s for quite a while there. A lot of that has to have to do with Damwon's opponent record. They've played against some pretty bad teams, and they've basically stomped them into the ground. Afrika has played against slightly better teams and been behind at 15 minutes, but coming back for wins. I do like this kind of stat, the same way I was talking about with the other teams. When you're seeing the negative gold differential at 15, but a plus gold differential per minute, I generally like that. However, it's pretty hard to like that in comparison to plus 2600 at 15 and plus 320 gold differential per minute. So, no doubt the stats are leading towards Damwon Gaming. No doubt about it. This matchup feels very, very interesting to me. This feels like a good matchup. I think Afrika is going to end up being one of my favorite underdog plays. Keen versus Nuguri. I mean, what a matchup. Just an exciting matchup between two like absolute studs in the top lane. And honestly, whoever wins that matchup, the matchup could kind of go that way. I do like if you're going to play small stacks of Damwon or Afrika, I think Keen and Nuguri are very good choices. I think both teams will either target the top lane very heavily or ignore it. I don't think we're going to see any half actions in the top lane. But if they target it very heavily, then Nuguri and Keen are obviously some great people to be involved with. This matchup feels closer to me than this. I'm not sure plus 250 is correct. The stats on Damwon are so insane, but their record's been so easy, it's kind of hard to really take it that seriously. I like Afrika quite a bit. They're one of my favorite underdogs today. I think I actually like them more than I like LGD for the most part. Maybe not from a fantasy scoring perspective, but as far as like ability to win their matchup, I actually think they're probably in a better spot than LGD. So, looking at kill per win and death per loss, 17.9 kill per win for Damwon, 17.2 death per loss for Afrika. So you're looking right in the 17s there. That makes Damwon very playable. Kill per win for Afrika, 15.6 to 12 death per loss for Damwon. Not looking so good for Afrika there. But when you see a team that has those two numbers, 17.9 and 12, you always expect this to level out somewhere in the middle. Because there's not very many teams that have this low of a death per loss and this high of a kill per win. I expect those to average out over the course of the season. Either the DPL is going to come up or the kill per win is going to come down. If I was guessing, I think the kill per win probably comes down. Most LCK teams don't average a number this big, and I would expect that to continue here. Looking at the last matchup, T1 and Solheim Prince. So T1 minus 1600, Solheim Prince plus 650. T1 is 4-2 on the season, Solheim is 1-5. I didn't include the additional stats for this matchup because I think this matchup's really straightforward. T1 just absolutely dominates them. 266 extra gold per minute, like a 460 differential and gold differential per minute. They're better in both First Blood and First Turret. They have way better dragon control. Monstrous difference in the gold difference at 15, with Solheim being minus 2204. One thing a couple people had asked me about that I'm going to try to include a little bit more often. I might not do it every slate, but I'll go through the team rosters with you guys as well to kind of get an idea of what the patterns are for everybody. So let's go to real quick. Let's go LCK Summer 2020. And we'll just look through the team rosters for the 4 teams that are playing today. So for Afrika, it's pretty safe. It's been the same players every game. Keen, Spirit, Fly, Mystic, and Ben. If they put anyone else in, we don't have any evidence that that was going to happen, so I think you just play these 5, and that's not a problem whatsoever. Damwon, similar. They've only played Nuguri, Canyon, Showmaker, Barrel, and Ghost, and the team has been highly successful this season, so I also think there's absolutely no reason to think that there will be any sort of subbing in Damwon Gaming. Going to Solheim Prince. Solheim Prince is an interesting one, and I have a thought on what's going on with them. So, Ixu has played every game. I don't think you have to worry about him as the top laner. Flawless has played every game except for one where they brought in Kuma. I think Flawless is probably pretty safe. Mickey and Keen. Mickey has played every game except for one. This one, I think I would be slightly worried about. Mickey is the kind of guy that's really hit or miss, and since they're having a very miss of a season, I could see Keen coming in. I would be a little bit worried about Mickey getting subbed at some point. Hybrid played every game up until the last series against DRX, where they brought in Trigger. I did this on the site as well, but I think you're going to see, it's the same thing with Secret and Mia. Secret played every series up until the Dragon X one, and then Mia played. Something tells me that was them knowing that they're in a near impossible matchup against DRX and trying something new out with Trigger and Mia. I think we're going to see Secret and Hybrid again in this next matchup against T1. You know, you're never sure, but my first instinct is that they're going to go back to Hybrid and Secret in this next matchup. We'll find out if that's the case, though. For T1, Canna has played every series. I think he's pretty safe. Cuz came out for 2.5 series for Elam and then came back in against Gen G. His position, I have no idea what to expect from for this next matchup. Elam played this Damwon Gaming match that they ended up losing, and it made me think that I thought for sure they were going to play whoever they thought was their best jungler in that matchup because they would really want to win it, and they played Elam. So then the next series against Gen G, I expected them to also play Elam, and they played Cuz. So I don't really know what's going on with their jungle situation, and I wouldn't even register a guess as to who's going to start at that position. If I was gun to my head, I would say Cuz, but I honestly don't know. Maybe they go back to Elam because it's an easy matchup against Solheim 1. I'm not really sure exactly what's denoting the change in jungler for them. Faker and Teddy have been completely safe all season. They brought Curry in for a couple games earlier in this season against the worst team in the league. Since then, it's been all effort. I would expect it to continue to be effort. Let's go to the LPL. Team rosters over there. FPX, very consistent, same 5 guys every game. JDG, same 5 guys every game. LGD only had one game where they played Garvey instead of Longji. Other than that, it's been the same guys every game. I would expect that to maintain the same. And Vici. Cube every game. I think that stays that way for sure. I'm very worried about their jungle situation. They're going to start Leon in this series, but last series they took Leon out for Aches in Game 2 and 3 and won Game 2 and 3. Very worried for Leon. If I'm trying to play safe in any way, I mean, I'm not playing Vici if I'm trying to be safe anyway, but if I'm trying to be safe, I'm not messing with Leon at all. I think he could definitely become Ace at some point in this series. Zika, he's been good enough in the times that we've seen him that I think he stays in, and iBoy and Hong have been in every game as well, so no reason to think that anything's going on with those guys. Leon, the one real problem, I think, as far as Vici goes. Possible ownerships. Solheim 1 and T1, Dam 1 and Afrika, FPX and Vici, and JDG versus LGD. Let's start with lowest owned team. That's going to be Solheim 1, guaranteed. Solheim Prince will be the lowest owned team on the slate. I would guess that the next lowest owned team on the slate will be Afrika. People generally, like I say, kind of stay away from the LCK games in general where they can help it. Vici Gaming, I think, goes next after that. And LGD, probably. I wouldn't be actually that surprised to see LGD be higher than T1. T1 is a huge favorite in this matchup, which might have people leaning more that direction. Maybe Dam 1's lower than T1. That's probably incorrect of me. T1 there, maybe, and then have FPX and JDG is tough. FPX is minus 315, JDG minus 210. LGD will have some ownership. I guess that means that I think FPX is going to be the highest owned team. T1 arguably might be up there too, just because people really like having big favorites, even though I'm guessing T1 does not project that well today. Let's take a gamble on this. FPX, JDG, T1, LGD, Dam 1, Vici, Afrika, and Solheim 1. Pretty much guarantee Afrika and Solheim 1 are going to be the lowest. Pretty much guarantee FPX, JDG, T1 are going to be the highest three, unless something to do with the way that you can fit the lineups matters. We'll take a look at just that stuff in just a second to see if maybe I have to revise my opinion on where these teams are, because I will revise that if the way that they fit together doesn't work very well. So let's take a look. Before we even look at who's going to score the points, let's actually just try that little theory out. And this is something that you can do for any slate that you want, something I do kind of commonly. Let's say we want to play FPX and JDG. We get a jungle captain. Okay, what happens if we get JDG and, say, Dam 1? 80 carry captain with 4 JDG. So that's going to up your Dam 1 ownership right there. The fact that you can play an 80 carry captain with them and JDG. What if we did FPX and Dam 1? 80 carry captain. This one's 80 carry captain with 4 Dam 1, which is a little bit less impressive, but you can still get 80 carry captain there. What if you did T1 and Dam 1? Jungle captain. What if you did T1 and FPX? Support captain. T1 and JDG? Jungle captain. So that means I think FPX and T1 will be a very low-owned combination in GPPs unless they have a different team slot. Maybe they drop this team slot down to somewhere else and get an upgraded captain, but people do not like playing support captains. So I could definitely see that being a lower-owned combination. I could see Dam 1 JDG being very popular since it fits the 80 carry captain. And was it the only one where you could fit that? You could fit it with FPX, but it had to be Dam 1's 80 carry, which I think is going to be less impressive for people. Still probably a bit higher owned. I'm going to drop T1 down here, given that information that we've got there. I think T1 probably comes down a little bit because their pairings are harder and people are pretty aware that they're not generally as high scoring of a team. I don't know that LGD is going to be higher than them, though. I think maybe LGD goes... Maybe they just go down below Dam 1 as well. Yeah, I think it's more like this after looking at the way this can space out. Dam 1 and T1 actually might even end up being reversed, with Dam 1 being higher than T1. That would make sense to me, given what we're seeing and how they price out. Let's look at the favorites real quick and see where the scoring is coming from. So JDG at the top, followed by Dam 1, T1, and actually FPX at the bottom for top laners, but JDG at the top, so the Korean teams in the middle. In the jungle, it is LGD at the top, so Kanavi, then Tian, JDG at the top, sorry, Kanabi. Tian next, then T1 and Damwon being the lowest. In the mid lane, FPX and JDG again, with the Korean teams lagging a little bit behind. T1 at the bottom of the list with Faker. At the AD carry position, JDG and then Teddy is up there a little bit with LWX in third and Damwon back in last. And at support, Beryl actually takes the jump up and is in second place with T1 last and JDG in first. So it's generally telling us the LPL is the better matchup. JDG in particular they think is the better matchup. And T1 is the worst, I would say, of the group as far as their average level here. T1 the team to avoid. And that makes sense to me. They're a minus 1600 team. If you're going to play GPPs, yeah, I would take the day off, I think, from T1. I think they're probably going to be way over-owned for what they're worth here, given the fact that they're minus 1600. People are going to be all over them, and they're not projecting very well. Let's look at some underdogs. Looking at the underdogs, Vici actually projecting the best in the top lane with Solheim in second, Afrika in third, and LGD being last. In the jungle, LGD jumps up to first with Vici second and the Korean teams in third and fourth. Korean teams in third and fourth again at mid, not surprising with Mickey and Fly in particular. ZA and Zika projecting the best. The AD carries far outshining the mids in these particular matchups, so you definitely want to try to go to AD carry if you can. LGD up front. Hybrid always looks good as far as his projection in a win. And Mystic actually at the bottom, which is not surprising. I kind of expect Mystic in general to be a huge carry player, but he really hasn't had to be this season, so not surprising that he's a little lower on the list there. And at support, it's LGD followed by Solheim, followed by Vici, and Afrika in last. So if we had to put a name on something, LGD seems like they project the best one. And the dogs are not being kind to me today. Going on to cash game lineups, the last thing kind of we need to talk about today. Looking at the odds, you'd think T1 would kind of have to be. They have some ceiling against Solheim 1-2, so it's pretty hard not to include them. I didn't mention their kill per win and Solheim's death per loss are both very high. They project like one of the highest on the slate if you're just talking about kill per win and death per loss. I think those numbers are kind of fraudulent. We've talked about it before. I think those numbers are going to normalize a fair bit, especially when you see an 11.6 as the DPL and a 15.6 as the kill per win for Solheim. Tells me, generally speaking, these aren't two teams that are insanely bloody every game, and they've probably had some outlier performances. We'll have to see. We're starting to get 6 games into the season. Like, a record's really starting to be there. Maybe this is true. I don't think so. I think you're going to see less bloody games from T1 as the season goes on, for sure. So I don't know that I would trust that this is going to be the bloodiest matchup because of some KPW and DPL stuff. They're not projecting that well, and I would kind of agree with that. Especially with the price on T1, the fade just seems too easy to do. But they are negative 1,600, and they do have some upside for sure. The other favorites, Damwon's minus 375, FPX is minus 315, JDG minus 210. It's FPX and SKT stands out to me, but it is a jungle captain or a support captain when you do that, which is obviously not the dream. You can. Oh, T1 team is super expensive. That's what's forcing that. Trying to see why it was playing a 3-3 when the JDG players or the FPX players would certainly project higher in most spots. Yeah, it's playing the 3-3 because T1 team is so insanely expensive. As far as pure safety goes, I mean, it's pretty clearly FPX and T1. You could go FPX and Damwon in cash. Damwon is minus 300-ish. But I'm just not sure I trust this minus 375. That just feels really far to me for this matchup. I'm not sure that I trust minus 375 there. I don't know that I think Damwon is quite that safe. So I'd be a little bit careful with that one. You could try to get some upside with FPX and JDG. You're getting a jungle captain there for JDG, which is our highest projected team on the slate. That seems pretty good. I might lean towards just going with an FPX JDG. Both those teams are pretty upsettable. but you're getting an awful lot of ceiling out of that compared to what you're going to get out of FPX and T1. Just not a ton of ceiling in that particular setup, given that you have support captain. In heads up, I think I would just go with the support captain of FPX and T1. I think it's a little bit easier to win heads ups a lot of the time. You're putting one opponent to one choice of what team he wants, and if he wants to go for a riskier choice, you're giving yourself a still chance to beat him, even if all the teams win, because I do think those teams have enough upside that JDG could lose one of their games like 15-2 or whatever, and then suddenly it's likely that FPX and T1 could be optimal. So I think that's definitely playable in heads up. If I was playing something a little bit larger like the double ups, I think I might go slightly less safe and go with something like JDG and FPX. You can play Damwon with any of those teams too if you want, but those three actually all seem safer to me than Damwon. So I think I would play FPX JDG if I was talking cash games for tonight. So, interesting slate. I got to go splice this one together since I had 3 separate dog issues. But go ahead and talk to me. Discord, Twitter, anything like that if you want. Ask me any questions if there's anything in the video that you couldn't see or didn't understand or anything like that. And we can definitely go over some possibilities for this slate because I think the slate is full of possibilities as far as mixing and matching. People talk about like your type of one-off lineups. There's no reason you can't play a lineup that has a one-off from, say, Damwon Gaming, who's pretty cheap. You know, throw their team slot is pretty expensive, but like Ghost is very cheap compared to other people. You could put Ghost in like an FPX and JDG lineup or something like that to try to get better ownership, and maybe an upgrade somewhere to captain position. Like, let's see. Let's real quick. I was about to leave, but let's just really quickly try something. What happens if we put Ghost in here, and then we play FPX JDG? Could you maybe get? Could you maybe get an 80 carry captain if you did that? JDG, FPX, JDG. If you made Ghost the captain, you could. So you could definitely get an 80 carry captain if you mixed it up. If you switched one of your JDG players over to an FPX player. No, they're all more expensive, so you wouldn't be able to do that. But in any case, I mean, there's ways to switch these up for sure. You can get 80 carry captain if you make Ghost the captain and then fill it out with JDG and FPX and stuff, and that's very possible. Ghost can definitely have the kind of series where he does better than a jungler from the LPL, and that would make it be a better decision to play him if that was the case. So, very interesting. I like the slate. Definitely come talk to me if you have any questions about it or anything, because I'm definitely going to want to talk to people about this slate too. I haven't made my lineups. I go through at the same time I go through with you guys. So I will talk to you guys later, and have a good one.